Joining us right now is Fox News military analyst General Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Maria.
Is North Korea looking for a fight?
Well, they're not going to start a fight with the United States because that would mean the destruction and the loss of their regime, in my view. But clearly, this belligerence and the developing ballistic missiles that could be weaponized with nuclear weapons certainly is a very dangerous and provoking act on their part. It's got our attention. It's got the Chinese attention. And Ambassador Haley there, who I think is a rising star in this administration, put it exactly right. Certainly we don't want to have a fight with North Korea. But what Mr. Trump has said is that if necessary, I will, because he's not going to permit the North Koreans to have the potential to launch a nuclear weapon at our bases in the Pacific, at our allies, or at the continental United States.
So, I mean, why is this person taunting us this way? What do you think he's trying to say with these provocations?
Well, he's done something that his predecessors really didn't do. You know, they got, his grandfather and father got nuclear weapons essentially to preserve the regime. They can deliver them, you know, from an airplane to South Korea. That was the whole thought process. But what he has done is he accelerated the development of ballistic missiles, medium range. He has some that you can put on submarines. He tested them successfully, not talked about too much to the media. He's got land-based medium-range ballistic missiles, and he's trying to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach the United States. That mystifies China. It mystifies us as to what is his true intent in having that delivery means. And I think in the back of his mind, the more offensive power that he has, that he can demonstrate, the more concessions he will get from the United States and China.
Yeah, but I mean, I think President Trump is trying to tell a different story, right, with his readiness.
Well, the president is doing, I think, exactly the right thing here. He's taking this threat seriously. President Obama, strategic patience was the name, but it was do nothing. And that just mystified our allies, intimidated our allies quite a bit, South Korea and Japan in particular. We have reassured our allies with the multiple visits out there from Vice President Pence, Secretary Tillerson, and Secretary Mattis that we have got your back. We are not going to let this get out of hand.
Yeah.
And certainly President Trump's own actions have demonstrated that. And clearly he has made the first breakthrough in some time with China. We've given China now our diplomatic football to run with it and to see if they can work the North Koreans to denuclearize and stand down this ballistic missile development program.
Yeah, that's certainly a big victory, given the fact that 3 presidents had tried to get China engaged in this conversation and was unable to do so. Let me ask you about the war on terrorism, General, because the top U.S. general in Afghanistan seemed to confirm yesterday that Russia is supplying weapons to the Taliban. He did not dispute the claim when asked about it while speaking alongside Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. Do you believe that the Kremlin is supporting the Taliban?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got pretty good evidence of that. They are supplying them with weapons. They're using the Iranians mostly to get those weapons into Afghanistan from the west and from the south. The Iranians are allied with the Russians in Syria, and they're allied with the Russians here in pushing against the United States and the Afghan government in support of the Taliban. The Russians have taken a much more aggressive stand here than what they have in the past, and that's why the general's bringing it up, and also Secretary of Defense Mattis. What they've come to realize that the United States seems to be permanently stationed now in Afghanistan, and they resent having the United States on their southern border like that as a sphere of influence in southern Asia. The Iranians have always had that feeling, certainly, and that's why they've worked against the United States efforts. To be frank about it, in 2001, they both supported our efforts, the Russians and the Iranians, when we invaded Afghanistan to topple the Taliban regime. But now, because it's 16 years later, they are pushing us. They want us out of there.
Yeah, it gets complicated there. It's true. Well, the Trump administration seems to be sending a strong message to Syria, meanwhile, following that chemicals weapons attack by Bashar al-Assad regime. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin announced financial sanctions yesterday on 271 employees of a research center thought to be responsible for developing the sarin gas that killed dozens of people. Listen to this.
The United States is sending a strong message with this action that we will not tolerate the use of chemical weapons by any actor, and we intend to hold the Assad regime accountable for its unacceptable behavior.
Was this the right move, General, these sanctions on 271 people?
Yeah, I mean, we've done this before. President Bush did it in 2005 against the same organization, his research center that manufactures sarin gas and other toxic chemicals, frankly. And we did it in 2007. You know, most of these people, as you can imagine, in a research center, they're not policy people, but they are people actively engaged in the development of this toxic chemical. And I think what we're doing to them, and none of them have investments in the United States that our people can determine, so we're not going to be able to access those investments and freeze them. But it does send a message to them, by name, they are committing a war crime and subject to international criminal prosecution. And I think holding them accountable by name is probably the most we're going to get out of that. It's worth taking that stance. I mean, we're a country that has strong moral values. Europeans feel the same. We've got to stand up against the use of a weapon of mass destruction like this on innocent people. We have to be accountable to taking that kind of a stand.
So what would you say, then, are President Trump's victories in this first 100 days as it relates to foreign policy, then, General?
I think it's mostly a win-win in the national security arena. And, you know, what happens to a president, he takes office, he's got a domestic agenda, he's got to get that going. He needs the cooperation of the Congress to do that, and we see how some of that's frustrated here. But the world has a way of coming to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's happened to every single president post-World War II, very dramatically so. And it's happened to this president. And I think the way he's handled North Korea, the action he took in Syria, reassuring our allies all around the world that despite the rhetoric of the campaign in opposing NATO and criticizing specific countries, he has reassured all of those allies out there that the United States is back on the world stage as a global leader, exercising responsible, decisive, and I think moral leadership once again.
Yeah, I think that sentiment has really resonated throughout. General, it's good to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Yeah, good talking to you, Maria.
General Jack Keane joining us there.